Hello and welcome to another episode of the Prime Premier League podcast. Mr. Ketspire, how are you this week and how are you this evening?
Good evening. How are you, sir?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you, mate. I'm actually quite excited for this show. Back to the Premier League now. The Euros is finished, so should be a good show.
Oh, yes.
Let's start with Arsenal. What's your expectations for Arsenal this year, and what do you make of their summer transfer business, if any?
Don't think they're setting the world on fire in the transfer market. They're being linked with a few people. I don't think that they're going to be doing a lot of business by the looks of it, because I think that there would be a lot more rumours. They may pick up the odd acquisition here or there. I did think that they'd be going for Rashford, to be honest, but that seems to have gone quite quiet. But I think, to be honest, I think Arsenal have got, you know, a strong squad there with what they've got, and I think Arteta obviously is trusting what he's got, and that's like the way it looks to me. I do think that they still are a couple of players short, and I do think that they need to sort of strengthen. But I just don't think they will, and I just feel like Arsenal will be Arsenal. They'll be thereabouts, but they will come up short.
Yeah, I actually think Arsenal may win the league this year. I think what they're looking to do is, well, my understanding of what they're looking to do is they've got to offload before they can bring in now. Their closest signing is centre half, aren't they, from Italy?
Yeah,
But they need to get rid of Emil Smith Rowe, and I think they've quoted something like 50 million to obviously your boy Palace and Fulham. Do you generally see, and obviously we're still on the topic of Arsenal, but do you generally see a Palace or a Fulham going in with a £50 million bid for a player that has only played a handful of games in the last 2 years?
I hope not. I hope not. If they're asking that sort of money, I think that let's hope Fulham spend their Paulinho money and they get him, because I don't want my club paying that sort of money for him. I think it's far too risky. That will be our highest ever transfer, and when a club is spending that sort of money on a big let's be real, it would be the biggest signing we've ever made. So, do you think Smith Rowe will stand up as the best signing we've ever made? I don't. I don't think he'll be. I don't think he's fit enough. And to be honest with you, I don't even see where he fits in that Palace team, because if I had my way with the players that we've got, if we keep the ones that we've got, he wouldn't even get in my starting 11. So there's no way I want to be spending that sort of money. I think that we gave him a very fair offer of 35. They obviously said no. If we would have got him for 40, I would have gone fine. But anything more than 40, then I think you just pull the plug on it and we move on.
Yeah, I think I'm sort of glad we haven't been linked. We was linked with him obviously early on in the transfer window, but that seems to have died of death. And yeah, I think you're right. They've got 50 million for a player that's only after. It's a lot of money, and you just don't know what you're going to expect. And I think there's better players out there. I think Arsenal are only a striker away from winning the league. Now, Osimhen they were linked with, but it looks like he's going to Paris Saint-Germain. Lukaku looks like he's going to Napoli. Who do you see them bringing in for that middle role for them, or do you think they'll stick with Kai Havertz?
I think they'll bring a striker in. I think that they're going to strengthen at the back, strengthen in midfield yet again. And I think this is the problem with Arsenal. We all know what they need, and it just bemuses me that they can't see it. And you know, it's all well and good going, all they need is a striker, but they've needed a striker for the last four transfer windows, and they've spent hundreds of millions of pounds. And it's like, well, they obviously need more than we think, because they keep spending all this money. And all right, they're getting a bit closer. I'll give you that, but I think that they're only getting closer because of the fall off of other clubs. And I think this year some of the other clubs will come back stronger. And I've just got this feeling that Arsenal won't be as close as they may think.
Interesting. Let's move on to Aston Villa. I think they've had a fantastic transfer window this summer so far. What you making of their expectations? Obviously, they've got the Champions League to worry about now as well. Do you think that's going to falter their Premier League not performances, but their sort of position come the end of the season?
I did think that. I did think that. And my gut instinct was that Villa didn't have a team capable of firing on all cylinders. And I think with Aston Villa, they are the sort of team where it wouldn't surprise me if they got through that group stage. And as we all know, the Champions League is a longer competition this year. But with the business that they've done, I've actually backtracked on it. And I think Emery is the right man for the job. And I trust the process there. And I think, the players he's bringing in are very, very good players. And the players that he's got rid of compared to the ones that he's got in, he has strengthened. Let's make no mistake of it. He is strengthened, and there's more strength and depth there than there's ever been. And I've got this funny feeling that Villa are going to be in the exact same position, and I'm tipping Villa third or fourth.
Yeah, I've gone Villa with a third place finish, mate. I think they look they've bought exceptionally. And I know people laugh at their signing of Ross Barkley, but he's going to come in. He's going to be a cup player, not Champions League, but he's going to be a cup player. I generally think that they're going to be a superb outfit this year. I generally do, and I think, as you say, Emery is definitely the right man to take them forward.
I think he goes into that starting 11. I think he plays in the league. I think he showed that with Luton last year. And I think he's the sort of person that could go into that Villa team and with the quality around him will look even better than what he did in Luton next year. So I think that Ross Barkley has got that move on merit, and I believe that he's going in there to make a difference. And I think he can be a game changer.
Yeah, Whitehead, since I think Villa will struggle with domino effect of the cup competitions depending on how deep they go into tournaments. Yeah, I do get you worried, but I just feel like the way they've signed and they've not. I know they sold Douglas Luiz, but they sort of had to because of what we now class as the FFP. But to bring in Onana today for 50 million, I think is a bargain. When you look at Smith Rowe potentially going for 50, Barkley's going in there. They got some good players, and yeah, I think they'll be all right. I generally think they'll be all right.
Young winger back as well, haven't they? The one from Hull. I always pronounce his name wrong, so I'm not even going to try.
Philogene, yeah.
Yeah, and he's a very exciting prospect. He's someone that I did want to see at Palace, funny enough, and I think he will. He'll be a player as well. So I'm very impressed with the business that Emery's done, and I think that in Emery we trust. I think he's a very, very successful manager. So it would not surprise me at all if they keep it going. So
yeah. Let's move on to Brighton, mate. What are you making of Brighton? I know we both said that we both see them struggling this year. Do you stick with that?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I think that team got found out last year under De Zerbi. I think that Dunk is falling off. I think that Brighton aren't the force that people think that they are. They had a very good season. They got into Europe and they done well in Europe with regards to what they had. But I always said it will take its toll on them and they'll get found out. And this manager, I'm just not convinced at 31 you've got the experience to compete with the big boys in the Premier League. And I think any manager that's got any bit of experience will, he'll get found out. Obviously, that is, open to interpretation and that could ultimately, come back to bite me on the bum because Brighton have got a good track record of doing okay with these managers that, we think, oh, I don't know where he's come from, but I just can't see it with this lad. He's too young. He's far too young. I just think it's crazy.
Yeah, 31 for me. Young manager. I don't know what to expect. That's the worrying thing. I don't know what to expect. It's like to expect the unexpected. Do you know what I mean? And that's sort of what I'm going with. I know they signed a player from Newcastle, 33 million. We know what they're like in the transfer market. They're very shrewd and they do come up with a gem every now and then. Well, majority of the time. Bottom half finish for Brighton this year. I think, Doc. Would you say that's fair?
I actually think lower than that. I actually think I've got Brighton. If they're not careful, I can see this manager going quite soon, and I think it'll be a long season for Brighton. And I think that they will they'll be thereabouts in the relegation zone.
Interesting. Let's move on to Bournemouth. Seasiders, I'd say a good year for them last year. A lot of people, again, it was expect the unexpected. Got rid of Gary O'Neill. A lot of people thought it was unjustified getting rid of Gary O'Neill because he'd done such a good job the season before. But the geezer they brought in probably did he did do a great job last year, if not exceptional. What sort of season do you think they'll have this year?
think the big but is Solanke, isn't it? Until that transfer window's shut, if Solanke goes, there's a big hole there. I think Bournemouth are a steady club, and I think they've done a remarkable job with becoming an established Premiership team. I think people don't quite realise, because it sort of goes under the radar, what a small club they are in terms of Premier League, capacity and everything else. And when they come up, it was a massive achievement, but staying up every year is equally as impressive. So, they're not even in relegation battles, are they? Let's be honest. So I can see them being steady, but again, I don't think they're going to set the world on fire. I don't think some people are saying under this new manager, they think they'll break the top 10. For me, I don't see that. I think that they will be sort of, they'll be in the bottom half, that's for sure. And I think that they'll be sort of towards the top to the middle of that, that second tier.
Yeah, just some news on Solanke. So they did say today that they don't expect Solanke to leave this summer, which I find quite interesting because he has been linked with a lot of clubs, but they don't expect him to leave this summer, which is a bonus if you're a Bournemouth fan, really, because you don't want to lose your key assets, do you?
Yeah, and I just think money talks, though, P. It's all well and good that we've.
Oh yeah.
I'm a Palace fan, mate, as you know, and we've heard it all before. Don't expect it, but money talks. And with this transfer window, the way it's going, I think people will test the water with quite a large amount. Now, I do think that people will try and get them on the cheap, but I do ultimately think that he is gettable.
Yeah, I don't disagree, but at the moment, I think it's a coup for them keeping him there. Brentford, mate, long season for them. I think. I generally think Brentford will go down, especially if they lose Ivan Toney. And I know Mbeumo's been spoken about leaving as well. So, what do you think on Birmingham? Sorry, not Birmingham, Brentford.
Yeah, I've got a funny feeling that Frank could be the first sacking of the season. I think if you look at all the other clubs, like Martin at Southampton just signed a long-term contract when they knew that he was coming up. So I can't see them getting rid of him if things don't go the way that, because I think that it's expected. I don't think that Leicester will be getting rid of Cooper that soon, because I think, again, you should know what you're getting with Cooper. I don't think Ipswich would be getting rid of their manager anytime soon, even if they're struggling. And I've just got this funny feeling when you look around that he's one of them managers where I feel like he's taken that club as far as he can take them myself. And I just feel like that, he's on borrowed time. But this year could be that one step too far for him, and I just think that sometimes managers outstay their welcome a little bit when he goes a bit stagnant. And I put him in that category, me. And I've said all along that I actually think Brentford and Brighton will be competing for that third relegation spot this year.
I remember us talking last year, and we were surprised that Thomas Frank hadn't been sort of mentioned of losing his job, especially with the form that Brentford had picked. That Brentford had, even when Toney come back, they didn't look that good, did they? And he wasn't mentioned at all. Yeah,
they actually dropped off when Toney come back. All this talk of when Toney comes back, we're going to shoot up. They had a really good start to the season, and that was the thing that kept their head above water. But with regards to the second half of the season, after the transfer window, they wasn't very impressive at all.
No, they weren't. What do you make of obviously Toney being linked with obviously West Ham and Spurs at the minute, like the only two that are going to sort of try and battle it out for him? What do you make of that? Do you think if they keep him, they stay up, or do you think he'll go?
I think he'll go. And I think the two that you just said sort of fix the wheel. I've got this funny feeling that Arsenal might test the water with him, though, now that their money's been reduced. I feel like Arsenal could potentially take a punt on him. They're not going to break the bank, and I don't think it's going to be the answer to their problems. But I think that he's a good addition to the team, and I think with the money that you're talking about, it's sensible. It's sensible. And if he does become like, the fox in the box like Francis Jeffers, for argument's sake, then it's an added bonus.
Just out of interest, what system do you think? Obviously, we don't know what system West Ham are going to play, obviously, with a new manager, but what system do you think he'll fit better into? Do you think he'll fit better into, let's say, a Lopetegui at a Wolves, say, that we knew what way he played, or do you think that he'll fit in better to an Ange system if they were the only two clubs that went in for him?
I would say he fits into West Ham's system better because you put more crosses into the box. So
Yeah.
I think that suits him better because I think Tony's like good in the air, and I don't. I was talking to a good friend of ours, a mutual friend of ours earlier about Tottenham and about Tony, and they're not the sort of club that put crosses in the box, are they?
No, no. Whitehead goes on to say that Tony at Spurs, he doesn't think fits the mould for Ange. Yeah, I'd probably agree with that. To be honest with you, I think he'd look a bit better under a Lopetegui than what he does Ange and Spurs. Let's move on to our next club, Doc. It's an interesting one. This one, Chelsea. What? Obviously, they've brought in more kids. Let's say because that's what they are. New manager under Maresca. We've spoken to Palace fans, both of us. This probably the same Palace, not Palace fans, Leicester fans, that say that he'll be out by sort of Christmas because he's all right, but he's not that great, and his style of football is quite boring. What are you expecting from Chelsea this year?
I think again, it's all dependent on this manager. I feel like Chelsea will be quite strong this year, as in defensively. I feel like that they are going to be more defensive as opposed to like Chelsea's that we've known before. So I think that might upset a few Chelsea fans, but I also feel like if they keep it tight and they win games, then let's be honest, fans don't care. I don't care when anyone says, when have you ever been disappointed where you've won 1-0 and gone home and gone, oh, I'm really annoyed we won 1-0. Do you know what I mean? So I think it's all depending on them results. And if he can grind out them results, then great. But all this talk of he comes from the Pep mold. No, he doesn't. He may have worked with Pep, but he does not play the Pep way. He's not nothing about Pep has worn off on him. But again, we never know, do we? Because the thing is, Leicester fans, what they don't understand is you can only work with what you got. And they haven't really got that great of a squad that can play, the Pep way. So he might surprise us, P. I think that they've got a lot of attacking flair there. A bit like Jose Mourinho, right? I've had this conversation quite a lot when people say Jose Mourinho was a defensive manager that parked the bus. And I turn around and I always answer with, what, when he went to Chelsea and scored 100 goals in his first year? That's parking the bus, is it? So,
Yeah.
you just don't know. You just don't know with this guy. And like I said, it's all on him really. And if he performs, then they'll do well. And if he doesn't, then it could be another disappointing season for Chelsea. But I think you've got to have realistic expectations. I don't think even if he does well, I don't think you're talking top four. All these people are saying top four. I think that there's four teams in a better position than Chelsea. So I still think that they need, you know, fifth, and then obviously they finished sixth last year anyway. So fifth or sixth again this year, and to me that is still a good season because I still I still stick with sixth last year was a good season for Chelsea. So if they finish sixth again this year with a new manager, I still think that's a good season.
Yeah. Whitehead goes on to say Dewsbury was a bit of an odd signing. Yeah, it's odd if they keep Gallagher. I think if they get rid of Gallagher, then you'll know why Dewsbury's been put in there. But just touching on last year and Leicester fans, I think the fact that he was 18 points clear at the top of the league and they managed to throw that away and just about win the league probably says a lot that we need to know about Maresca and obviously Championship football.
He also had quite a bad record against the bigger teams in the league. It's
Yeah, he
like
did.
he's head to head against certain teams. I mean, I watched Leeds beat them 3-1. All right, it was 1-1 and they should have probably had a penalty, but at the end of the day, it wasn't given. And then Leeds run away with it, and we all know what happened to Leeds last year. You're looking at Southampton that beat them 3 times, and then a Leicester that they got beat quite convincingly, really. So again, you know, I personally don't think he's the right man for the job. As in, I think Chelsea needed an established Premier League manager to try and steady the ship. I do appreciate what they're trying to do, and I hope for them it works out. But it wouldn't surprise me if he's number 78 in the last 10 years of managers, and the fifth manager that will be on the payroll at the job centre. You know.
I don't disagree with you. Moving swiftly on to the. Hang on, May says, "Hi lads."
What's happening, mate? You all right, mate?
Oh, what's happening, mate? Walton says, "Well, QPR, Middlesbrough, all had better of them." Yeah, you're right. And QPR struggled as well. Just about stayed up. I'm sure Middlesbrough done the double over them. So says everything we need to know. Moving on to your beloved Crystal Palace, mate. Do you know what? Let me start on this one because you support
Okay.
Palace, and I'll let you have your 5-10 minutes in a minute. But it kills me to say it, right? And I'm gonna say it because you're here, but it kills me to say it. Palace are my surprise package for next season. And I generally think, when I say surprise package, I generally think you could get into that top 7 or 8 with what you've got, Glasner, and the signings that you've brought in. Obviously, there's still a lot of talk around players coming in like your Smith Rose and other players from abroad, but you generally could have a very good season this year. Come on, let's hear your view on your beloved Crystal Palace and where you're going.
Listen, I'm a bit, I don't want to get my hopes up too high, but I think we've all seen a glimpse of what Glasner can do. All this talk of, but Elise is gone and you might be losing Geehy. If you generally think that we're going to be that weakened with them two with regards to the players that we've brought in, bearing in mind we brought in a Walton and a Nunes, I don't think people understand what Dougie Freeman is all about. Every signing Dougie Freeman makes, he makes full-heartedly, confidently, that they can go straight into that Crystal Palace system. These are Dougie Freeman signings. These are Crystal Palace signings, not Glasner signings. And the fact that the guy that we've brought in is Glasner's worked with him before anyway, that is an added bonus. But let's not be fooled. If Glasner wanted him and he didn't fit the philosophy of what we want to do as a club, then he wouldn't have been signed. So I'm excited. But we haven't had Glasner for a year yet. And now every single team in the Premier League last year has now played against him. I think you will all be a little bit more familiar with what you're going to get from him. So it could go one or two ways, half a season is great, but there's a big difference between half a season and a full season. So I'm not getting too carried away. If things go the way that I anticipate them to go, I'll be over the moon with with a 9th or an 8th. But I don't think 7th is realistic right now. I feel like that I don't want to do what Brighton done. I don't want to crash the European party and then the Premier League season is jeopardised by that, especially with how big the competitions are. So I'd rather have a lot more strength in depth through this window, the January window, and then the next start of season window before we potentially go into a European campaign. But again, put it this way, I'm not concerned by Palace. I'm not even concerned. Even if we lost Eze and Geehy, I'm still not worried. And that says a lot because I think if you go back 6 months, Roy Hodgson in charge and tell me that you're going to lose Eze, Geehy and Elise, I would have been petrified. I'm not going to lie to you.
So that's lovely. That sort of touch on this sort of question. It says, you say Palace look good and wish they did, but lost Elise, but Eze could be leaving to Spurs. If you lose both best players, you don't think they'll be in trouble with that?
My answer to that is, Mason, I've just come back from fishing, fella, so why don't you stop fishing? You're not getting Eze, mate. There's no way Eze's going to Spurs this transfer window. I can't see it. I generally can't see it. And like I just said, I've already just touched on that anyway, so obviously your comment was a bit behind, but I'm not phased. I don't think people appreciate the quality that we've got in this squad. I really don't. We've got Rakasui, who's looking good again. Scored for us the other day. Is bursting at the seams, waiting for a good run in the team. We've got Franca, who, played against some of the big teams last year and had good games. His fitness was a little bit hit and miss because he's just come over from Brazil. I'm really not concerned. We've got Kamada come in now. We've got the new centre back from Barcelona. I keep forgetting his name, but
Riyad.
Sorry,
Riyad.
Yeah, Riyadh, that's the one. So I'm really not worried. And we got Decore back this year. He never played not one game for us last year. That's like a new signing, and people forget how good Decore is. We've obviously got Walton for a full year, and in my opinion, we've got one of the best left backs and one of the best right backs in the league. So I'm really not worried.
I also think though, if you do lose both or all three, it then gives you that money to go out and buy players either of a similar sort of standard or better, because you've got to be looking at the best part of 150 million for the three of them. And I'm just putting a number out there. So 150
How
million
much
for.
did you say? Sorry,
Mhm.
how much did you say?
I said 150 million if you was if it was to go and all three of them were to go. So you've already got your 60 for Elise, Eze and
50 for Elise. It's add-ons takes it up to 62, but 53. But you're right. You're right. We would get 50 for Geehy. We'd get 50 for Eze. So yeah, you're right.
yeah, 150 million. You got there and buy three decent players for that price. So I wouldn't be worried if I was a Palace fan either. Just a quick one. May says, "What do you rate Villa's summer transfer so far?" We've touched on Villa, but we're both very excited by Villa, and obviously with Felix, obviously could be on his way there as well. Could be an
Yeah, that's a
interesting one.
big signing for them.
That's a big, yeah, massive signing for Villa. So move on from Palace, mate. Let's go on to Everton. What do you make of their season this year? Obviously, they've lost a couple of key players as well.
Yeah, and I think there's a couple more to go as well. And again, like you just said, when players are going, you've got the money to reinvest. We know that Everton haven't got that. Everton are in difficulties. I think that this having two grounds going at the same time is a schoolboy error. No other club has managed to do it before. I think that this is Old Mini was biting them on the bum. I don't really understand what they were thinking when they actually thought it would be a good idea to build a new ground and carry on using the old one. You know as well as I do, P, with your lot now. I know that obviously you didn't build your new one, but if you did have to build your new one, ultimately you would have shared a ground or rented this one temporarily, sold Upton Park, and you would have been using the money from the land. So, I think it's crazy what Everton are doing, and that's why I've got no sympathy for them because I think that they are literally writing checks that they can't afford to cash. That being said, I still don't think they'll go down. I think Deitch is a good enough manager that knows how to. Let's be honest, Deitch has kept up worse to teams in the past, so I still think they'll be all right. But I think they'll be all right by a default of the other teams being like worse than them. So yeah, I don't think Everton are going to set the world on fire. I don't think they're going to have as good as a season as last year. And what I mean by that is people forget without the points deductions, they would have been potentially 10th, top half of the league. Even without the points deduction, I don't think that they'll put up that many points, but I think, potentially 15th, something like that. So I think they'll be fine, but I don't think it will be pretty, and I don't think it will be a successful year.
Yeah, just get off the back of what you said. Obviously, they've lost the Niners, as Mace's just pointed out. 50 million they got for him. Now, do you see the likes of Calvert Lewin going? Do you see the likes of Braithwaite going? I'm even going to chuck Pickford in there. Now, if them three go alone, I generally think if they lose all their top players, they go. And off the top of my head, I can only think of them three being top players. And it's a very aging Everton side as well. Yeah, I think they'll struggle to keep Calvert Lewin. He's injury prone. They might keep hold of him because no one want to take the risk. But on the other hand, Newcastle will link with him for 25 million. Do you know what I mean? We've been linked
I
with
think
him.
Calvin Lewin will go. I think potentially they may keep hold of Brainwave because of the money that they're asking for. I think Man United have actually gone off the idea. So I think that he will stay, and I think Pickford will stay. But do you know something? If I'm honest with you, I think next season Everton are in more of a problem than this season because they're probably still going to be in the same situation with financial difficulties, and they're not going to have the assets left there. All right, again, you could argue Braithwaite could be sold then, but then once he's gone, you ain't even got the money to reinvest. You haven't got anyone in the wings that's going to step up. So I do feel like they're playing with fire, and I do feel like at some point it will, it will come back the bum on the bum.
Yeah. Just while we are going to have a little pause there, May says, I know this is about the Premier League, but I just want to say it's great to see Southend have a new owner and can move on without worry to think their club will go. Yeah, it's massive news for Southend, and I wish Southend United all the
I
best.
wasn't aware of that news, and that is good news actually. Weird. I know it sounds stupid, right? I'm sitting here in shorts and a t-shirt, and as I was reading that sort of gave me goosebumps because I'm like, I was quite worried about them, and I don't want to see no club struggle like that. So that is great news, and I wasn't aware of that. So that's the first I've heard of it, and my legs, literally, I'm not even joking, I've got goosebumps on them. So
Yeah, no,
that's great news.
it's great news for Southend, and I'm glad to see their club on the up, as they say. Actually, not a problem, mate. Moving on to the next one, Fulham. I don't think we'll be on this subject for too long. I see mid-table obscurity and nothing else really from them. I don't see them challenging for the top half, and I think they'll be all right. I don't think they'll go down. What about you?
I'm the same. I'm the same. I think if anything, De Silva's job could go, but other than that, I don't think that they're gonna. I don't think they're going to set the world on fire. Even if they get Smith Rowe, I think that's a massive risk for them, even more so than us, because ultimately that's a lot of money, and that's the whole of the Paulinho money gone on a player that's probably not going to play half as much as Paulinho, and he's not going to be as influential for Fulham as Paulinho was. I mean, I could be wrong. Smith Rowe could get his fitness back, but I don't think he will. I just feel like with Smith Rowe, he's one of them players now where he's had the injuries when he's not playing. If he plays more, he's going to get more niggles. But yeah, I just feel like, again, when they're being linked with Smith Rowe and Brojos, I just feel like they're barking up the wrong tree.
Yeah, when you say he gets sacked, he might lose his job. Do you think he'd be sacked, or do you think he'll resign because he just can't be asked anymore? Would you?
Well,
Silva.
I think he'd be sacked. I don't think he'd walk. I don't. Managers don't really walk, do they? Let's be honest, because of the compensation. Managers don't walk. When was? I mean, all right, Klopp. I was just about to say, when was the last time a manager walked? Klopp. I'll give you that. But that was. I can't think of any others. When was the last time a manager actually walked? They're under contracts, and ultimately, when things get bad, instead of doing the right thing and thinking, "Oh, I'm going to walk," they stay for the compensation, don't they? So, I don't think he'd walk. I think he'll be sacked.
Yeah, I don't really know what expectations Fulham are looking for this year for him to sort of be sacked. I don't think they'll be in danger of going down. But maybe they're looking for a top 10 finish. I don't know. May says they need a forward. Fulham need a forward. I think every club needs a forward. May said, "What's your dream transfer to both of you?" We'll leave that till the end and we'll go through that. Welcome in, Tom. He says Ian Holloway's place.
Ian Holloway at Palace was the last manager to walk.
And we'll touch on West Ham in a minute, but if you could have one West Ham player, who would it be, Doc?
Want to do that now, or we're going to do that at the end?
We can do it now.
I think right now, I think it'd have to be Bowen, wouldn't it? Because he plays on the right, and he would go in for Elise. So I think the sensible choice would be Bowen. But I do feel like Kudus is, for me, the star man. That's my thing. And I personally, I don't know if me and you have ever had this conversation, Pete, but do you think Kudus is better than the Brazilian?
Two different players, mate, but I think, and I'll touch on it at the end of the show, I think Kudus will be the player to watch come the end of the season. Like this season, Kudus will be the man to watch.
Yeah, I just don't think you keep hold of him because with the players, we're coming on to West Ham in a minute, so let's pause for a sec.
We're going to go on to our evening. Ash, how are you, mate? You all right?
Yes, very well, gentlemen. How are you doing?
Yeah, good, thank you. We're going to move on to one of our newly promoted teams. The first one we're going to touch on, and that's Ipswich Town. Obviously, he's done a remarkable job there. He's got back-to-back promotions. He's been linked with Man United at the beginning of the summer. He was linked with probably Chelsea. He was linked with Brighton. He was linked with everyone that had a new manager. Ash, what do you think of Ipswich's transfer window so far? They've brought in a few, and what sort of season are you expecting to see from an Ipswich side that's just come up?
I mean, I think Ipswich have spent bought like reasonable players with having come up as obviously in the automatic promotions. I think some of their players are capable of playing in the Premier League anyway. So like a lot of their players that they originally got, a lot of them have come from League One all the way up now into the Prem. So I think mentally some of them are ready for the Premier League. But like their signings, like they desperately need a better striker. That's the one thing for me. They need a goal scorer. If they don't get the goal scorer, I struggle to see where most of their goals are going to come from. Maybe bar obviously Connor Chaplin. I do think though that they're going to stay up this season.
Yeah, so they have bought Delap as well, haven't they? Liam Delap from City. Which is he's impressed in the EFL, but whether he can do it in the Premier League, we'll wait and see this year. Doc, what are you looking forward to about Ipswich this year, mate?
For me personally, it's the only team that come up that will stay up. I feel like that they've got a manager that's done it the right way. I feel like, with the learning that he's done in the Premier League, it shows that he's got Premier League class. He's got a style of play that suits the Premier League. He's making signings that are, youngsters from the Premier League that, all are doing a job in the Premier League. Like, all right, they're not doing it week in, week out, but that's because they're not getting the opportunity to do so. And you heard it here first. Breaking news. Ipswich are going to sign Nketiah on loan.
Eddie Nketiah from Arsenal.
Yeah. I think that Arsenal aren't going to be able to I think Arsenal are not going to be able to sell him. And I've got this funny feeling he's going to want first team football, and I can see him going to Ipswich on loan with a view to buy. That will be the way that the deal works out, because they're asking for silly money, and I don't think no one's going to pay it. But if Ipswich can get him on loan, get the best out of him, and keep him in the Premier League, then they'll be able to afford him. So there you go. You heard it here first.
And you know what? I know you've got links in that club as well. You heard it here first. Quicker than Sky Sports News, us. Moving on to the second promoted side, obviously with the champions of the Championship, Leicester City. Obviously with FFP, so they've been struggling to buy. I know they bought Fatawu in, but they had him on loan last year, and I think that would have come out of last year's sort of budget for them because it was an obligation to buy. What do we think of Leicester? Straight back down or going to stay put, Doc?
Yeah, straight back down. I think that any point deduction that they get, which I think they will get, is not going to help their cause in the slightest. I don't think that they're even going to get enough points to stay up without point deductions. With point deductions will be the cherry on the top. Straight back down. Cooper. Yes, I appreciate why Leicester fans feel like, well, Cooper's kept Forest up before, but completely different kettle of fish. He spent a lot of money. He had a lot of players come in, and it took all of them to keep him up just. And it was just. So, I don't think. Put it this way: there was a time where he was being linked with Palace, and I didn't want him at Palace. I wanted him at Palace because of the fact that other managers were being linked, and I think he's a nice guy, and I felt like he would have kept us up. But I only wanted him at Palace like on a short-term deal. I didn't want him as like, a manager that would. I was like, when Roy Hodgson went, I wanted him to take over to the end of the season just to keep us up. But that was with the points that we had and the quality that we had, and Leicester's got neither of them. So yeah, I don't think Cooper's good enough to keep them up with what they've got. That's just my opinion.
Tom says Dr. Romano just said, "Here we go." He definitely did. Ash, what about you, mate? What do you make of Leicester? Do you think they'll stay up or again?
Nah, I think they're going to massively struggle this year with the implications of FFP as well, having to sell their best player last year to Chelsea. I just feel I don't know where the creativity is going to come from apart from the wingers. Like
Harry
generally don't even.
Winks.
Yeah, we're saying this guy that flopped the Spurs is going to absolutely turn it on for Leicester in the Prem. I don't think so. I just see them struggling and going straight back down. To be honest, defensively as well. When you've got that I can never pronounce his name, but FaZe at the back, you know you're in trouble.
Yeah, the Belgians.
You know what? Do you know what? I'm going to go one further. Leicester will finish bottom.
Hold that thought there. Moving on. Let's make this one quick, lads, because it kills me. Liverpool FC. What? New manager, not being linked with anyone, zero transfer news coming out of Liverpool Football Club, been linked with absolutely zero players. What sort of impact do you think Slot will have? Ash, I'll start with you on this one.
I think the whole aura of Klopp is going to weigh negatively down on Arne Slot. He's got a lot to prove and very little time to implement what he's got to do with these players, because these players have won trophies and countless amounts with Klopp in charge, and he's got a big order, a big task ahead of him to get these players motivated to even get anywhere near what Klopp's done for Liverpool. And I'm probably going to sound a little bit outlandish here, but I don't think Liverpool finish in the top 6.
Do you know what? I'm glad you said that. And I'll tell you why. Because earlier on, I said that Liverpool finished 7th or 8th. And I got absolutely laughed at. But I'm glad you said that because there's someone on the same page as me. Doc, do you see Trent signing for Real Madrid? Do you see Liverpool losing any more players? And who do you think they'll bring in, if anyone? And how do you think Slot will go this year?
I've already got wanted pictures in Liverpool, so I can talk quite freely, so it's all good. But I just feel like the Liverpool squad is average. I've said it all the last season, and I will say it till the cows come home. That is an average Liverpool squad. Like their midfield is bang average. Half of these talented players they're talking about, right? There's 4 or 5 out of the 7 midfielders that would not get into another top 4 team in our league. I'm sorry, they wouldn't. Klopp overachieved. The Klopp effect took them so far, but the Arne Slot effect, I think, is going to get them found out. And with regards to Liverpool, they have got some big dilemmas. They've got 4 players, 3 in their last year of their contracts, and 1, I think, with 18 months of his contracts. If Liverpool don't sell these players and they do not sign new deals, the 4 biggest assets that they've got is walking out the door for free. And Liverpool is not that club that can do that. Now, I know they've done it in the past, but again, you can only do it so often. And once these ones are gone, name me the next valuable player they've got. I'm talking Salah last year of his contract if he walks for free. I'm talking Van Dijk last year of his contract if he walks for free. I'm talking Alisson if he walks for free. And bearing in mind, Alisson is heavily linked with the Saudi at the moment, and so is Van Dijk heavily linked with Saudi at the moment. I'll take the money, mate. I would take the money. If I was Liverpool Football Club, I would sell Van Dijk while I could. If he's not going to sign a new contract, take the money and go and get Guéhi. That's what I would do if I was Liverpool Football Club, because I do think Guéhi would go to Liverpool. I do think that the money that they would get from the Saudi League would cover their costs. But I just feel like Liverpool are playing with fire. And like I said, once them 4 have gone, where's their assets left there? Because I don't feel like there's much there that warrants decent money. Maybe Diaz to Barca for 50 mil, maybe, but where's their assets?
Do you think they get 50 million for Diaz though?
I think they would. Yeah, I think they would with Diaz. I think that Barcelona are a bit gullible. But yeah, I mean, even if they did 50 million in this day and age, you know, we've got 4 or 5 players linked with that. You know, it's not club changing money, is it? Let's be honest. Like 50 mil, what that gets you a replacement nowadays. It don't. It's not like you can reinvest it in the squad. If you lose 4 of them and you raise 50 mil, there's no coming back from that, in my opinion. Not for a couple of years, anyway.
No. Swiftly moving on from Liverpool Football Club.
Mhm.
The champions, Man City. Obviously, Edison looks like he could be on his way to Saudi. Kevin De Bruyne looks like he could be on his way to Saudi. Foden didn't really have the best of Euros, but absolutely set the world right last year. Do you think that City could have fatigue that causes them a few issues this year? Doc?
First of all, Kevin De Bruyne is not going to Saudi. Even Romero's already said it was fake news. People put 2 and 2 together and got 66. He basically stated that he could go to the Saudi League and earn in a year what he earns in 3 years. So he would consider a move to the Saudi League. But for me personally, what that means is he's got 1 year left on his deal. He probably knows that Pep's going to leave. Chances are that's going to be 5 in a row. He walks on a freebie at the end of his last year, and he can take mega money in the Saudi. But I don't think Kevin De Bruyne goes this year. I do think Edison is a possibility, even though his agent has stated that he'd rather stay in Europe, but they're not ruling out the Saudi. But I do think that either Allison or Edison will be a goalkeeper in the Saudi league. So one of them will go. I'm not sure which one. I think City are in a better position if he goes, because I feel like their number 2 is better. But I also feel like Liverpool's number 2 wants first team football anyway, or he's going to go. So again, it makes sense for me, like from both to let them go, really. But I don't think City will fall off this year. I think they will win the league again. I think the Pep effect is the Pep effect. They're still making some great signings yet again. They're still arguably strengthening, as much as that is painful to see. I don't think they're going anywhere anytime soon. I feel like they're gearing up for a Champions League campaign again. Still don't think they'll have enough in the Champions League. I think Real Madrid will be too powerful. But I think that they will win the league, and it wouldn't surprise me if they've done a double this year.
Ash, City. I know they're your local rivals, your neighbours next door. What do you think?
I mean, it's pretty much for me a shoe-in for Man City to win the league every year. Like they won 4 on a bounce. I just don't think Arsenal have got the minerals yet to get it over the line with. Like, yeah, you can say they potentially, a couple of defining games in December, and obviously, for me, the game against City themselves, for me, cost them the league. Not even the Villa game. I don't think the Villa game cost them the league. But yeah, I think it's a shoe-in for City to win the league, and we see with City as soon as they lose a player, they'll replace a player like within a time frame. And sometimes it's even the case of when it was a changing of the old guard. Rodri, for instance, Fernandinho was at the club. Rodri was bought in before Fernandinho even left, and as soon as they come to it, he was in there ready to replace him. So City have always got their model of how they do their business, and it's not going to be any different next year, this year, or the next 2 years, unless obviously things change with Man City as a club.
Yeah, I think City probably 5 in a row, and the Premier League becomes a farmers' league next year, doesn't it? Let's be honest. Moving across the city to the red side, Man United. Ash, I'm going to leave you till last because United have done a lot. Doc, United. Impression so far in the transfer market?
I'm impressed. I feel like they've done good business, but I still feel like certain things are being sort of like looked at the wrong way, in my opinion. I feel like we've got a new era and we're not going to make the same mistakes again. We're not going to do this. We're not going to do that. And yet they've gone out and got for me, a centre back for the future when they're heavily linked with a centre back for the right now. And for me, they should have got De Ligt first and then worried about the other guy. And I also feel like they've paid well over the odds for him. When Real Madrid and Liverpool are sort of valuing him at 20 million, they've paid more than double that. And I don't see where that figure's come from. And I can't help but feel like Man United have just been overcharged again. And that to me says that nothing has changed yet, I do think he'll be a good player. I do think Xerxes will be a good player. But I just feel like United need to fix the right here, right nows, especially with regards to, in my opinion, Ten Hag is still on borrowed time. It's no coincidence for me that they never give him a new deal. They extended his current deal by a year. I think the FA Cup bought him another year, but I do feel like he's still on trial. I don't feel like they're fully guaranteed to keep him, and I feel like that is one of the reasons why they're not going all gung-ho with giving him the players that he wants. It's more youngsters so that if he goes, the new manager can work with them, or if he stays, he will benefit from them. But I feel like the signings that are being made are for Manchester United long term, not necessarily to help Ten Hag right now. And I feel like Ten Hag needs a little bit of help right now, because I've asked Ash before, and I'm sure Ash will touch on it. What is a good year for Man United? And I'll wait for Ash to answer that question after. But with the answer Ash gave me, Ten Hag has still got pressure on him this year, because I don't think he would deliver on the target that Ash has set him myself. But I'll hand it over to Ash because it's his team and let him speak a bit more on it.
I like I said, I'm generally happy with the business. This is something that's not happened for us to do business this early and in the manner that we're doing business. The amount of players that we're sort of being linked with, the amount of players that we're just going straight in for, and showing our card, showing our intentions as to the figures that we'll pay. And if, say with Branthwaite, for instance, we're going to walk away from it. It's too much. Everton want too much money for him. Just I think with the Euro signing, I think it is on a bit on the hefty price, but I think, like I said, he is one for the future. Maybe we should be prioritising De Ligt, but I mean, De Ligt is definitely 100% going to be done anyway, without question. 2 centre backs are the priority, but we still massively need it. Like I say, a number 6 in that midfield. And there's still a couple of uncertainties for us. So overall, I'm happy, but I'm not fully satisfied. I still want to see players that we actually genuinely need. With like I said, with Doc, when he said about my intentions, what I want from United this season is, if we are not going to get top 4, because I don't think we're going to get top 4. If we don't get top 4, we have to put all our eggs in one basket, and 10 Hag will be gone if we don't get Champions League football. That is the intention. I think this is the reason why we're putting all this on the line and spending big bucks to bring in players that we generally need for the system, for Ten Hag to get the best out of these guys. We have to win the Europa League. It's as simple as, if we don't win the Europa League and we don't get top 4, Ten Hag's gone. From my eyes, and especially from the board want results, and they want to see Champions League football.
Just before we move on, just briefly tell Big P about the youngster you was talking to me about earlier, mate.
Toby Collier. Toby Collier looks a decent player as well. He can play the 6 role. That's sort of more of his duty. He has played as an 8 as well. You say he can play as a centre back, so it'd be nice to see sort of. That's the only thing sort of for me so far from Ten Hag's stay, which I can actually be impressed with, is the fact of his work with the younger players, which he's brought through Kobbie Mainoo this year, obviously Garnacho from last year on to this year. and then obviously Collier if he gets game time as well. And I'm hoping that Amad Diallo as well can be another player in that list that can get a little bit of game time this year and show his credentials, because I think he's a great player in there.
And he scored the other night, didn't he, against Rangers, Diallo? So I like Diallo as a player. I think he'd be good. I think United have a good season this year, if I'm honest. Moving further up north, even further up north, Newcastle. Now, bit of a funny summer for Newcastle, isn't it? Because they've been linked with a lot of players, but no one really over the line. And now that Amanda and her husband, don't ask me to pronounce their other names because I don't know them, have pulled their stake out of the club. Look like they're going to reinvest, or they want to reinvest it in Spurs, if you believe the rumours. What do you think could happen to Newcastle this year, Doc?
I just think Newcastle's Newcastle, and I just don't feel like they seem to progress. And I know that might be like, people might think that sounds a bit silly, but they're supposed to be, the concept was new Saudi owners, we were going to compete with Man City, and they're certainly not doing that. And for me personally, I feel like Eddie Howe's took them as far as he can take them. I mean, they may scrape a Champions League spot, they may do, but they won't do anything in the Champions League. And so what? I just don't see what the hype is with Newcastle myself. I just feel like I don't even think they'll get Champions League this year. I don't. I really don't. I don't feel like. I feel like that there's teams in front of them that have got an established game plan that they've put into movements, and they've shown the progression to get to where they want to go. Newcastle haven't done that. Yes, they had a lot of injuries. Whoopie do. So did everyone else. Get over it. I just don't think that they're going to. I just don't think that they're going to be that team. I just think Newcastle is Newcastle. That yes, they are one of the biggest teams in their area. No, they're not a big team when it comes to Premier League status, and the bigger teams would always outperform them.
So, Doc, on the back of that, Eddie Howe for England or Eddie Howe to England?
I think Eddie Howe will. I don't want to say they'll sack him, and I'm not convinced they'll walk away, but something's got to give, because they're going to stay stagnant. And if he turns down this England job now, I don't think he'll get another shot at it. So I feel like something's got to give, and the sensible thing to do would be to let him go and let the club move on. I know a lot of the Newcastle fans say they don't want to lose him, but I think you're just blinded by the lights, because you could get another manager in that could take you to the next level. And I don't feel like another manager coming in, Newcastle will fall off either. I feel like they'd still be thereabouts. So yeah, like I said, I just feel like it's a sensible thing to do. Whether that happens or not, who knows? But I don't think Eddie Howe at Newcastle, they will be doing much this year. That's just my opinion.
It's interesting you say that, because I read today that Pochettino was their favourite man if obviously Eddie Howe does make that move to England. Tom, just to answer your question, I believe Tonali's back in August, so he is back in August, but I don't know what part of August, but he is back in August. Ash, what do you think of Newcastle?
I generally think the Newcastle, they're just one of them teams. I think Newcastle have gotten a little bit gung-ho way too quickly. The amount of players that they've brought in, the money they've spent, when they need to work on the club side of it first, in regards to their commercial brand, to sort of bring themselves up towards the rest of the guys. So like I say, they're implicated by FFP this season. Like, it takes time to grow a brand, and Newcastle, fair enough, they are a well-known team in the Premier League, but they're just not on the level of the rest of the teams. And like I say, you've seen they've been erratic with their spending, and say there's not many outgoings from Newcastle, maybe one or two this season. But I think Doc put it perfectly. I don't think Eddie Howe's the man for the job. I just don't think that. I don't think we've seen any progression from Newcastle, to be honest, over a time. They might play, nice football at times. they play good against, they have good games against Man City or United or Chelsea, whichever, but it's never consistent with Newcastle. It's always one step forward, two steps back. And they can put in an absolutely brilliant performance and go and beat Man City away from home, and then go and lose to Luton Town, or draw 4-4 at home. Like, there's never any consistency, whether it's injuries or not. Newcastle are just not consistent enough.
Do you know what Newcastle are? They're a small Spurs of the North.
Fair enough. I can't take you serious, Doc, sometimes. Do you think Bruno Guimaraes, obviously being linked with Man City at the moment, do you think he goes, or do you think he'll stay at Newcastle for another year? And I've just read that Tonali is also being linked with a move back to AC Milan, but he is available for the third game of the season, and that's when Newcastle are on Sky to Tottenham Hotspur. So his first game back could be Tottenham. So, yeah.
I think that it would make sense for Newcastle to do this business, because I read that part of the deal was City was going to give them 2 players to soften the blow and some money. So I think the money helps, and I think the 2 players is just strength and depth, which is something that they can't do with the lack of money. So I feel like that with Newcastle, they've got no choice. I know that Gordon was heavily linked to Liverpool for silly money. I don't think that will happen. I think it's too risky. I know that people say that he's a Liverpool fan, but those Everton routes, could you imagine if Gordon went to Liverpool and Liverpool struggled, like under Slot? Like, oh, it'd be crazy, wouldn't it? He would be chucked under that bus quicker than you could say abracadabra.
Doc, also, just say yes or no, but have Newcastle got FFP worries as well?
Well, put it this way. Correct me if I'm wrong. They had until the end of June to sell players, or they was going to be in breach on the next FFP, and they hadn't sold anyone at that point. So I don't see why it's gone away all of a sudden, unless there's something that we don't know. Unless it's like because them 2 owners have sold their shares back into the club. I don't know how that works, but to me that don't make sense, because they've sold it to the guy that already owns it. So it's not like it's fresh money into the club, is it? He's already there. So to me, it's just a change of name, so to speak. 2 have walked away, and one's like increased his stake. So it's not like what Manchester United did, where they had someone come in with a big investment. So yeah, like I said, as far as I'm concerned, that I don't see how they haven't still got it hanging over their heads, and it wouldn't surprise me if they get hit with one.
Yeah. Moving on to Forest now. What do we make of Forest, and do you think they'll stay up? Ash?
Forest are a tricky one, and they like. I thought to a certain degree, I thought Cooper was pretty hard done by last year. Like, I get it; they have to sign a lot of players to bring in. Like, they have to sign over 20 players. I think it's it's a record for a team bringing in that amount of players, because most of them were on loan the previous season. Like, with the way that he had to integrate all these players into the team and try and get them to work together and deliver results at the same time is not an easy task. But obviously, having said that, he is a manager. That is his job, to work out with the best team and to get the best results. But for Forest this season, obviously they've been linked. A few players have been linked away with moves. Murillo, especially, being linked to big clubs. I think they need to just genuinely keep a lot of their most important players. Your Morgan Gibbs-Whites, Murillo himself. I think they just need to have a good core of players and not keep chopping and changing and bringing in new players. I think Hudson-Odoi is going to have a very good season this year as well. I just think they need to give these players a good run out and obviously try and keep their main striker at the moment fit. Having said that, though, I do think Espirito Santo is going to be the first manager to be sacked.
Nice. Doc?
Too many transfers, too many chopping and changing. Nothing's changing. No improvements. Another year struggling. Fall from bottom. Next question, please.
Yeah, don't disagree with you there, Doc. To be fair, Southampton, newly promoted team, South Coast, lost their striker to Torino. I think he signed for today on a free transfer. Haven't really replaced him. Bought in Flynn Downs, Taylor Harwood Bellis as well from Man City. That look like they're going to struggle for goals. Straight back down or going to stay put, Doc?
I think they'll be straight back down second from bottom. But they will still finish above Leicester. They have been linked with Rakasui from Palace, the youngster. If they get him, he will bring flair to them, and he will get game time there. But that being said, I've watched Martin, as in the manager Martin, Southampton at Swansea. The fans was not happy with him there at all. I've never ever watched a game of football live in my life that passes the ball back so much. I felt like I was watching the rugby. It was one of the first games I went and watched in Wales. I honestly thought I was at the rugby. Everything was going backwards. And with all due respect, he broke Southampton's record and they still wanted him out. Tells me everything I need to know. I don't think he's Premiership quality. I think they get found out. I think his style of play will not be good enough. And they haven't got the quality to grind out the results. Straight back down.
Ash, Southampton.
I mean, yeah, I generally think that Southampton are primed to go straight back down. Generally, like with the players they brought in and everything, like, and still the players that they've had to let go in the past, like the caliber of players that they did have, which they don't have anymore. That there's no way, there's no way they're gonna stay up with the caliber of players they've got. I don't think they've particularly strengthened. They brought a couple of Championship players, which were already in their league, and I don't think they're all of a sudden gonna be world beaters. And yeah, I think they're going to go straight back down alongside Leicester.
Yeah, fair enough. Moving on, Tottenham Hotspur. I think it's a big season for Spurs this year. Do you not? Again, being linked with a lot of players. They've just sold Højbjerg, which is a surprise for me, because they've still got people like Skip in their ranks. But they've just sold Højbjerg for 17 million it's a loan to Marseille with an obligation to buy him for 17. But the be all and end all is he's not in their squad for this year, and I thought he was probably one of their better midfielders. What do we make of Spurs and Ange's season this year, Doc?
I think it's a big year for Ange. I feel like he needs to deliver. He needs to deliver Champions League football. Really, I feel like that's where they need to be now. They got so close last year, and I do think that he probably will as well. I do tip Spurs for the fourth spot. If he takes the cups seriously, then I believe that he could potentially cause an upset and actually deliver on the curse of Spurs. But yeah, it is a big year for them. I am impressed with the sort of business that they're doing with regards to the youngster that they brought in. I think he's a good buy. I think he will bring something to the table. I feel like they will bring in another striker, probably Tony, and Richarlison will go off to the Saudi League. I think Richarlison had a good season last year, but I do think Tony would bring a bit more strength in depth. Even though we have obviously mentioned earlier that I don't think he necessarily suits their style of play at the moment. But I think with a Maddison there, with this youngster there, I think now that you've got Johnson playing regularly and Son, they could change that sort of mindset. But yeah, I do feel like Ange would have learned quite a lot from his first season in charge, and he won't be so gullible this year. And I think that they'll do a bit better.
Ash?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think Ange has got a lot of the tools. Like defensively, this Spurs team is a very good, very solid unit from goalkeeper all the way through. Midfield looks pretty decent as well, but I think it's the attacking forefront that's letting them down. And you might think that sounds a bit like ironic or stupid, whichever, because Spurs got a lot of goals last season. But I just think Son for the middle, worked last year, but this year with them having a striker, I don't think Son works off the left. I really don't think he's the same player as he once was. And they haven't said it. They desperately need a left-sided winger, and of course they're desperate for a striker. So if they get one, I see them having a decent season. If they get both, I'm tipping them for top three to finish third.
I think the worrying thing for Spurs is Kulusevski's been linked with Napoli and Conte. So it'd be interesting to see if they can keep hold of him as well. Swiftly moving on to across London, probably around 6 miles from the way the crow flies, heading east to West Ham. Doc, I'm going to talk to you about this one. What do you make of West Ham in their season so far, or their season ahead?
I think West Ham will be fine regardless. I don't think you've got anything to worry about, but I do feel like you need to strengthen your squad. The players you're being linked with, if you get the players that you're linked with, then I do believe that you will have a very good season this year. And I think that you'll be between the 10 and 7. But that is if buts and maybes, because it wouldn't surprise me if West Ham end up with none of them. This is the bizarre thing with West Ham, isn't it? I'll let you touch on it a little bit more, but the players that you're being linked with are proven Premier League players that would improve any team. So, I'd be a fool to say that they ain't going to make a difference. So, I listen. I've got a soft spot for West Ham. I know I banter with you, but my family are all West Hammers, and I don't have an issue with West Ham. So I hope you do get these players, and I hope you are competitive. But I'll leave it at that because obviously it's your team, so we'll let you have the main say on this one.
Ash?
I mean, I'm obviously not clued up on your signing so far, but obviously the players you've been linked with, I think obviously if you're able to, say, get an Ivan Toney, which you desperately need a replacement for Antonio, and obviously with Lopetegui, everybody's seen what he did at Wolves with the little period he had there. I'm tipping West Ham for good things this season. It's just based upon if you can keep a lot of your players, your Paquetas, obviously your Kudus, Bowen. You need these type of players, especially considering, a lot of these players have gone on, some of them have gone on to bigger and better things, like Declan Rice, for instance. I think a lot of these players are putting themselves in the shop window. I think if they have good seasons, it's only going to make you more attractive as a club for other players to come and join.
Yeah, so let's just touch on the thing here, Wan-Bissaka and Kante. 100% we've been linked with both of them, but no formal bids have gone in yet for either of them. And Kante is also happy to stay in at El Etihad where he's at. But West Ham are now in talks with Bayern Munich right back Nasser Mazzari, who is also interested in Man United, which tells me that the John Clare Tahibo bid that we had accepted, we will move away from now because he's taking too long to decide where he wants to play football. And Juventus still haven't made a formal bid for that yet. But we have been linked with Kyle Walker-Peters, right back, Wan-Bissaka, right back. Now, this guy from Bayern Munich. But we're also keeping tabs on Monaco's Vanderson and Bayer Leverkusen's Jeremy Frimpong. So, as Doc said, Tomori now as well. We're looking at. So, we've been linked with a whole host of players. However, we've still not been linked with a striker other than Toney. Calvert Lewin, yeah, there was talk of that, and John Duran. And I see a comment earlier saying John Duran to West Ham, but they're risks for me. And I see a bit of our game on Saturday, and we wasn't great. We struggled a little bit, but the way he looks to set up and play football is more possession based. So we will keep the ball. Now, have we got the players to do that? I generally think we have, but if we can get 2 of these deals over the line in the next couple of days, then I think we could be onto something. But we have to get these deals over the line. We can't keep talking, because as Doc said, we could end up with none of them, and that is a proper West Ham thing to do. So, yeah, Yeah, and we got you boys, and we got West Ham Palace at the end of July in America. We got Wolves first. But they're just friendlies. None of our big players are going to be there. I know West Ham have already said Bowen ain't coming back till beginning of August, and it'll probably be the same for your guys because of international duty in England. But yeah, I think for West Ham, I think we have to finish in the top 8, if I'm honest. Swiftly moving on. Last but not least, Wolverhampton Wanderers. Gary O'Neill did a fantastic job there last year on limited money. Just see him doing the same this year. Doc?
I just feel like they're gonna lose their best player. I don't think he's gonna be there come the start of the season. I like Gary O'Neill. Obviously, you know, I've got a soft spot for Gary O'Neill for obvious reasons, but I just don't think Wolves are, again, they're just that team that they're not really progressing, are they? And I just feel like, for me personally, it's going to be a bit of a struggle this year, and I feel like they'll probably end up in the bottom half of the league, but higher, you know, up the higher end of that. But yeah, pretty much where they were last year for me. But
Ash?
I generally think that Wolves are going to go down. They're going to get relegated. They're going to let go of too many of their assets and replace them with maybe a championship player. You know, the players that they've been linked with that I've seen so far, they don't like. I wouldn't be filled with confidence if I was a Wolves fan going into the season. Seeing your best players linked away and then seeing the caliber of players that you're linked with it's like Newcastle. It is literally taking them 2 steps forward and then 1 step forward, 2 steps back because there's no progression from Wolves. It's always they find these gems and then they let them go for huge money and they don't reinvest the money back in for transfers and ultimately then they're going to suffer and I generally think it's going to be their year where they go back down.
Yeah, I think they could go back down. But that brings us to the end of the show. Guys, I just want to put a big shout out to the guys that have put all their comments away, but also we've got a big celebration tomorrow. It's the one and only Dr. Ket Spire's birthday, so I wish you the very best and I hope you have a lovely day, sir.
thank you very much.
And try not to spend it all day sitting on TikTok. No, I'm joking. So if you do see Doc on TikTok tomorrow, please wish him a happy birthday for tomorrow, or happy birthday tomorrow. And Doc, I wish you all the best, mate. And I hope feeling 21 tomorrow makes you feel good.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Ash, always a pleasure, mate. Thanks for joining us. I know that you was obviously a little bit later today, but always a pleasure. Thanks for coming. Everyone in the comments, Tom, and the rest of you, all at Mace and all the rest of you that's been in, thank you very much. And thank you for the kind messages. And we will see you again next week.
Adios. Thank you for watching, guys.
There you go.